We're very excited at Energy Star to be starting work with this sector, which we have not worked with in the past. Next slide, please. Here's the agenda for today. After a few comments by myself, our partner in Energy Star and my colleague, Danny Sudman, will overview his work with Green Camps. He had a lot to do with pulling this webinar together and helping us meet other people like Lincoln Larson, who's going to talk about a seminal study based on a survey of camps and retreats and their interest in sustainability, energy and water efficiency and recycling. Jen Birch, an old friend with United Methodist Church Camp and Retreats, was also instrumental in getting Energy Star into this sector. After a webinar on House of Worship efficiency, she asked me if we would be interested in getting involved with camps and retreats. So that got us here. Jacob has excellent credentials with the camp and is our Canadian friend who will talk to us about the outdoor education work he does. Christine Honan is with the Catalina, California Environmental Leadership Program. Much of her work is wet work in the ocean, but today she's going to focus on gardens and composting and the way the education process. Kenny Thomas is with us because Danny and I talked about having someone that represents sort of the extreme of retreats. Park Hotels and Resorts is a 2022 Energy Star Partner of the Year. They operate 39 luxury resorts and hotels, and many of them beachfront. But what is so impressive is their green park strategy. It's very intentional and comprehensive, and they're making great progress with their hotels and resorts. So next slide, please. I should have had this up introducing everyone. You will have another shot at this. You will receive all the slides. This will appear on the last slide when we take your questions, but these are some of the more detailed introductions of all of our folks today. Next, please. Okay, speaking for EPA and Energy Star, we've been in business 25 years, and therefore way over 90% of Americans know the Energy Star, largely from products. Many people who know the Energy Star don't know we work with facilities. There are some 2 million new Energy Star certified homes. We have, I think it's about 42,000 commercial buildings that are Energy Star certified. And what certification for a building means is it's in the upper quartile of energy efficiency for that particular facility type, comparing schools to schools, worship facility to worship facility, on a scale of 1 to 100 in an online tool, which is it's available to camps and retreats, but there's not a score for certification at this time. And what we learned is that all the commercial and residential facilities on average are wasting 30% of the energy they're paying for. And then this tracks with them being responsible for about 30% of the United States greenhouse gas emissions. So the good news is for no cost and low cost types of actions, 10% of this 30% can be pretty easily recovered. And I'll say more in a few moments about how to get to the 10%. Beyond that, we have a lot of guidance and tech support training for a return on investment approach. That is, it's not going to be no cost or low cost, but you're going to see a payback that is significant for example, a lighting upgrade, or if you need to change out other equipment, we can help you understand that and do calculations. Something I learned from Danny that really got us moving with this sector is that there's some 30,000 camps and retreats. And even more importantly, that they educate about 14 million campers every year on the environment and sustainability. So this is an incredible opportunity for EPA to reach young people through our colleagues who have camps. What you'll hear from Lincoln is the degree to which camps and retreats really need and want to reduce energy and water waste and to recover those costs, to repurpose that money into their mission. So we see camps and retreats as natural partners with Energy Star. Next, please. A tool we've developed along the way, working with people like Jen and Danny and others that we know in the camps and retreat sector, is a checklist that's relatively comprehensive. It's not an energy audit, but it comes very close. If you download it at one of these live links, you'll get the generic version. You'll see this one is co-branded with Green Camps. And the Green Camps co-branded version is available on Danny's website. And Jen Birch, you'll see, has also co-branded with her logo. Now that co-branding is available to everyone. And if you want to follow up for your camp or retreat, my email will be on one of our last slides. What you're going to see in this checklist is walking through all the major areas of not just energy use, but also water use and also recycling. So one of the quickest paybacks is usually lighting, and then often the building envelope, the roof, doors, windows. If not replacing them, you can do caulking and weather stripping. And this is something campers can learn. It could be a summer project to help improve the facilities. Water, hot and cold, inside, outside, heating, ventilation, air conditioning. We know that office equipment and plug loads are growing everywhere with the profusion of electronic office equipment. And of course, the kitchen, food service equipment. EPA also has a program in helping reduce food waste. So with that, I will pass it on next to Danny. Next, please.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jerry. It's been such a pleasure. We've had several opportunities to chat and learn about the work that we're doing in our different sectors and see a lot of opportunities to cross over the resources that the organizations we're working with to benefit and really educate the larger community. You know, the statistics about the impact of the camp experience, I imagine, you know, looking at our attendee list, most folks are probably directly impacted by camp, but we can probably all relate and know someone who's impacted by the camp experience. So the work that we're doing can really have far-reaching consequences and positive impacts there. So my name is Danny Sudman, and I am the founder and executive director of Green Camps. I'm excited to say that we're coming up on our 10-year anniversary from the launch of Green Camps, and we've been a 100% volunteer nonprofit organization, and really just working to support camps in modeling sustainability to inspire green behavior change in those campers that are having those experiences every year. It's been quite a journey, and we're really excited for how far we've come and the lessons that we've learned. And I just want to share a few highlights on kind of the idea behind Green Camps and what our focus is up to this point. So this is one of the things, this lessons from the natural world. This was my aha moment when I was back at camp, probably 10, 15 years ago. I was on a hike with one of my mentors, and we were up on a hillside, and he set up a whiteboard and drew these 3 columns out. So we looked at the natural world and the social world, and we compared these concepts. So where do we see competition in the natural world? Where do we see it in the social world? From the organisms, the plants and animals, and then back in our home communities, the sociological impacts of those. And the light bulb clicked for me. I'm a sociologist, that's what I studied in school. And to draw those connections between the social and the natural world just really showed me this opportunity that, wow, the natural world is such a great model for sustainability, and we can draw those lessons back into the social world. The camp that I attended did a great job of drawing some of those connections back, and I see that opportunity that we can use these real world examples from visiting the natural world, which is one of the first and easiest things we can do to create an appreciation for the natural world, is just by visiting it. And camps many are located in very beautiful natural settings, and even if we're in cities, there's still opportunities to observe the natural world in some of those more urban landscapes there. But one example of the many, because I see opportunities all over the place when I visit camps for modeling sustainability, are taking small examples to show what does this, how can we learn from nature and bring those lessons into practical examples in camp. So energy is a really big one. I think Jerry touched on a couple different points on some really easy ways to save energy. When we look in nature, we can look at plants that have strategies to adjust the shape of their leaves, to go dormant, to be different colors, to adjust the sunlight they're taking in. So how can we connect those lessons back to our home community? So I found these two solar water heaters on eBay, and for $200 brought them out, and we put them on the boys' shower house. And the fact here, the amount of energy it takes to raise a liter of water by 1 degree is roughly equivalent to what's consumed by a 60-watt light bulb running for about a minute. So we can take the water coming out at ground temperature, the amount of energy it takes to raise that from 50, 60, 70 degrees up to the 100 or so degrees that we need for showering, or cooking or anything like that, is a significant amount of energy influx. So the simple idea of being able to model these solutions, we can then send these lessons home with campers. They're inspired, they have really cool engagement with these different ideas. And that's where I see the opportunity for camps and organizations to really set up to model and demonstrate what these practical, engaging solutions look like to inspire us to return home and implement those solutions. So it sounds easier said than done, right? So where we are today to help camps go from the ideation stage of all of these possible ideas to actually implementing them is our green certification program. So within the camp industry, Green Camps was the first to launch this certification program to help guide camps through the steps to really build a plan. That's what the objective of our certification program is, not to put a bow on a box and say, okay, open it up and they're now sustainable. That's not a realistic approach to solving that problem. Rather, we really look at team building, collaboration, critical thinking to come together and go through that process as a team so that you have buy-in, that you build that culture of sustainability within your organization to really move forward those initiatives. So we start with needs assessments and collect data. That checklist that Jerry mentioned, and we'll share links to that as well, is another great way to start collecting some data so you have some knowledge to drive the initiatives that are most important, that are best fit for your organization. Then we encourage formation of a formal green team, invite members of your community to sit down around the table and just have that conversation. Can be a really big step there. What does sustainability mean and look like to your organization is what that green team is meant to come together and figure out. Then we put together a sustainability plan, and we've developed tools to help really create a good baseline of what the objectives of that plan are to make it achievable and realistic in a realistic investment of time to do that. Then we put together plans and proposals for the actions to meet the goals and objectives of our sustainability plan. Then we want to share. I think one of the things I hear most from camps is they want to hear examples of what other camps and organizations are doing. And I think we'll get a lot of those good examples throughout the rest of this presentation. So my call to action and our big focus right now is inviting you to do a needs assessment, whether it's through the checklist that we're sharing through this, whether you come in and do a free green needs assessment through our organization, get some data to make informed decisions. The next step is form a green team. Again, these are both free things that you can do to start that journey and really dedicate and be smart about the investment of time and energy you put into these initiatives. So speaking of making informed decisions, I have the pleasure now of handing it over to Lincoln Larson. Lincoln and I met, I think it's been about 2 or 3 years now, Lincoln, that we've been collaborating. I came to Lincoln with this great big idea for a research study. He brought me down to earth and we came forward with this research, and really happy with the outcomes of that. So Lincoln, thank you so much for being here, and please, thanks for being here.
Yeah, of course. Danny, thank you. Jerry, thank you. Hopefully y'all can hear me. And if you want to pull up the slides again for me, somebody, that'd be great. Yeah, I was intrigued by this opportunity that Jerry already articulated. It's the camp sector is so vast and there's so much potential in this space to advance sustainability. We wanted to get a better understanding of what the appetite for sustainable actions would be and what those gaps that might be filled, what those might be as well. So let me see if y'all got the slides up. I'm not seeing them on my end here. Go back one, there we go. Yeah, so I teamed up with Danny and actually a group of undergrad students, most of whom were environmental science or environmental engineering majors who were super interested in this topic, to try to understand the state of sustainability in camp organizations across the United States. So back in 2021, we did a survey, contacted a bunch of different organizations, had 120 or so complete responses in camps from a variety of different types of camps across all 50 states. And if you want more details on those results, you can see the link to the paper there at the bottom. I think Jerry said he's going to send out the slides, but I just want to hit some of the highlights that I found, or that we found, most interesting. Next slide. First, we wanted to know why camp organizations would want to engage in sustainable practices. And our assumption was that that economic pitch would be really important. But as it turns out, it wasn't as important as environmental reasons for doing so, protecting resources, minimizing impacts, or social reasons, doing the right thing, setting a good example for campers. So this could influence how we communicate about sustainability with camps and how we might motivate organizations to get behind sustainability initiatives. Yes, the money is important, and saving money is a way to incentivize some of these actions, but it might not be front and center on the minds of these camp professionals and leaders at these organizations. Next slide. We wanted to know what they were currently doing in terms of sustainable practices. So working with Danny and the students who had a lot of expertise in this, we broke it down into 5 different categories. Many of these you'll find in the needs assessment that he talked about with Green Camps just a little while ago. And you can see here the percentage of the groups on the right side engaging all of the time in these activities, with the mean ratings there in the middle on a scale of 1 to 2 or 0 to 2. And waste management practices, so this would be things like reusing, reducing use, recycling, composting. They were most frequently engaged in by camps, but still less than half of camps were doing these types of things all the time. Sustainability, education, and communication, so this would be setting expectations for campers or staff and educating them around these practices. That was done by about 30% of camps all the time. Natural resource and wildlife conservation, that would be minimizing degradation for new construction projects, monitoring air and water quality, wildlife habitat promotion. That was about 1/4 of camps. Purchasing and procurement was much lower. That was buying organic, looking at single-use, avoiding single-use products. And then energy and water consumption, a lot of the examples Jerry already provided would be in that category, whether it's heating and cooling appliances, low flow toilets, renewable energy sources. Not a lot of camps are doing this. And so that is a tremendous opportunity right there. Next slide. Of course, we wanted to see not just what they were doing, but what they were willing to do or interested in doing and how they might prioritize this. And the camp organizations here said that #1 priority was sustainability, education, and communication. So this priority is a little bit different than you would see in a lot of other Energy Star facilities and organizations that don't have this education piece baked into what they do. But that modeling component for future leaders is so important, and the camp organizations recognize this. So that's a really cool opportunity. You can see the priority rankings. Purchasing and procurement was low on the list. There's a lot of opportunities there when it comes to sustainability. Energy and water consumption, kind of the bread and butter of Energy Star, at least as I understand it. A lot of camps are really interested in this, and 75% say they definitely want to do more of this. So there's a huge niche, not just with energy and water, but across all of these sectors: waste, natural resource conservation, all these different domains. A lot of opportunities, a lot of interest nationally to do these things. Next slide. Of course, we're interested in barriers as well, and the barriers here might not be surprising. We asked about 15 or 16 different barriers that broke into 2 main categories: lack of resources, so financial resources and technological resources to do what they want to do, and 90% of camps said this was at least a minor or major barrier. And then lack of awareness, not having the authority to do something, especially for affiliated not-for-profit camps that were kind of part of a bigger organization. Personnel, training, those were barriers for over half of camps as well. And the paper goes into more details on those barriers, but understanding both the incentives and the barriers is really important if we want to make some movement in this sector. Next slide. And then just to wrap up, kind of the highlights: many camps are already doing this, especially waste management and sustainability education, but a lot of camps want to do more. and not a lot of camps are monitoring the impacts of the practices they are engaged in. So there's another opportunity to track progress over time. We learned that many camps are doing this for environmental and social reasons, and economic reasons, though important, are less common, and perceived lack of resources were the biggest barrier to sustainability, with some other barriers in the mix too. And all these motivations barriers varied a little bit depending on the type of camp organization, and we talk more about that in the paper as well. I won't get into it here today. But the take home is there's strong interest in making camp sustainability a higher priority than it already is. And I'm really excited to be part of this conversation as we try to do that. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks again, Lincoln. And yeah, we'll share the resources. There's a great, Lincoln did about an hour presentation that dives into the research results a little bit more. So thanks again, Lincoln. Right. I think Jerry was going to introduce our next speaker.
I believe Jen's ready to go. There's her title again. Take it away, Jen.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. Thanks for having me. I represent the United Methodist Camp and Retreat Ministries Association, and we know that our 177 United Methodist camps and retreat centers across the U.S. are stewarding vast amounts of gorgeous property and many commercial buildings that use a lot of energy. And at the same time, because of our connection to the Christian tradition and our camp's missional commitments to faith formation and to education, as Lincoln was talking about, we have opportunities to help probably 1 million people annually to make connections between their experiences at camp and ways to live faithfully within God's creation. So we come at this, I don't know how to advance my slides. Could we do next slide, please? I have power here, but I'm not. Thank you. Thought I was going to do it, but I don't see a button. Okay. Yeah, so I mentioned the creation care tradition in Christianity, so we take that responsible stewardship seriously. Also, as United Methodists, our governing document, the Book of Discipline, features specific commitments to creation care. Our social principles include a section on energy resources utilization that mentions reducing consumption and prioritizing renewables. And United Methodists as a global denomination have made a net zero carbon emissions goal for 2050. So we're recognizing that Methodist camps are going to need to play a role in achieving that. Our camp association's guiding values, we call the 7 foundations of camp and retreat ministry, include the foundation, teaching, creation, care, and appreciation. So that's really a central piece of what we're about. And our own association mission includes the goal to help camps become more effective and sustainable. So that sustainability thing is baked right in. Many of our Methodist camps align with what Lincoln was talking about, doing some and wanting to do more. And we're right at the very beginning of inviting our camps to benchmark their energy use and begin to use hard data to guide their creation care initiatives. Next slide. So we worked with Jerry and Thayer from Energy Star to produce our own Crow-branded sustainability checklist, and you can kind of see what it looks like there. It's a version of the document that Danny was referencing. And it's a dream of mine that one day we will be able to collectively aggregate data from many sites across our community to help us apply for grants to keep growing in our energy stewardship and education efforts. So we also really want to get better at interpreting what we do for campers and families and retreat guests, just to build more awareness about what we're doing and the why, and about choices then that they can make, whether that's changing light bulbs, using water more responsibly, eating lower on the food chain, limiting single-use plastics, etc. Our association has virtual learning and support groups on various topics, and I help to lead one around creation justice, and we talk about those kinds of strategies. We also offer webinars and workshops and features in our association e-news just to help people tap into creation care topics and keep them in front of our camp and retreat leaders and encourage folks to keep learning. I wanted to just briefly highlight 2 projects that are happening at United Methodist camps related to creation care. So next slide, please. This first is a living shoreline restoration project, which is at West River Center in Maryland. This was the result of a multi-agency partnership with the Methodist Camp, including the State Department of Natural Resources and the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay and others. And it involved replacing a failing bulkhead across 900 feet of river shoreline at the camp with a dynamic living shoreline that can withstand the impacts of climate change storm events. It incorporates regenerative stormwater management through wetlands. And that little inset photo you can kind of see is showing summer campers that are helping to plant native grasses as part of that project. So they're both doing environmental education learning and also kind of participating and giving back to their camp and protecting their beautiful natural setting of their place. And then my final slide is it's another project just to quickly highlight our solar arrays at a United Methodist Retreat Center and a camp in Oregon. These arrays aren't providing all of the electricity the sites need, probably just about 50%. But when there's a surplus, it's poured back into the grid and the camp is receiving credits for that. So they're working to build in additional efficiencies and usage like LEDs and efficient heat pumps and fridges, water heaters. Thank you, Energy Star, for helping us work with those appliance upgrades. The main partner here was the Oregon Clean Power Cooperative, and they work with nonprofits to seek donors who can receive the tax credits for the installation. So in this model, another individual who received the tax credits owns the array, and the camp maintains the system and can buy out that donor after 10 years. There are lots of interesting projects happening at our Methodist camps across the country, and I'm happy to connect anyone who's interested to the site directors for these who relate directly to these projects or generally with our initiatives if you would like to learn more. I will yield to Jacob.
Thank you, Jen. Jacob, take it away.
Well, thanks, everyone. A warm greeting from White North. I'm the one representative from Canada and just be delighted to be with you all. Next. So I was inspired by a quote, and this quote comes from Simon Uganda, a Kenyan youth worker. And he said, you know, instead of asking what kind of world we're leaving for our kids, we should ask, what kind of kids are we leaving for our world? We're a not-for-profit charity, next. And our focus is on how do we activate, empower kids to want to care for the environment. Child these days encounters so many environmental problems. They hear about climate change, species depletion, pollution, overpopulation, and each one of those is like a weight that's placed on their shoulders that makes them think. And they say to themselves, well, thanks, Jacob, and thanks parents, and thanks the community for giving me this world, and you want me to fix it. So what can we do to inspire kids to make a difference? And research has shown that by simply telling kids about a problem, that's not enough. They need to feel some measure of agency, that they can do something about it. And at the same time, they want to be able to see that in action. So that's why we created, next, the Camp Kawartha Environment Center. This is one of Canada's most sustainable buildings. And what's cool about it is if you had walked into that field 15 years ago, there would have been some grass, but we built a building. And it's based on the living building principles, which I just love. This is an architect, Jason McClellan, who once looked at a tree and he said, you know, just by virtue of being there, that tree does more good than harm. It uptakes carbon, it gives out oxygen, aerates the soil, it provides habitat. It's beautiful. Why can't buildings be like that? And so the idea behind a living building is that it doesn't take water from a lake or an aquifer, but it harvests it from the rain. The materials are non-toxic. They're highly efficient. When its useful life is over, it becomes part of the soil. And here's the point. There's more nature in and around the building than before the building was built, showcasing the fact that we can create spaces where both people and nature can thrive. So here's the thing. Our kids are yearning to know how to make a difference, to be inspired. Buildings like that show that we can live differently. And, I keep telling this to Danny and he rolls his eyes, but I don't think the word sustainable is enough. Sustainable implies a steady state. I think we need to do better. And the word I'm loving these days is regenerative, bringing nature back. So camps occupy a space. What can we do with that space that makes it more nature rich, that a kid, when attending, can feel like they did something to make it more vibrant, better for those who come? Next. So one of the things we've been working on is, together with 50 organizations in our area, we've been trying to think about what do different kids need at each age and stage of their development to become engaged stewards. Because a 4-year-old is going to be different from a 6-year-old, from an 8-year-old. So we got funding and we did some research and we came up with something called the Pathway to Stewardship and Kinship. Now, I should say that we collaborated with our First Nations friends, our Indigenous friends, and they personally don't like the word stewardship because for them, it has connotations of being the dominion of, the boss of. Instead, they prefer the idea of kinship, that the natural world is part of our family and it merits being treated with respect, that it's not just there to serve humans, but it's there and has an intrinsic right to exist. At any rate, what we ended up doing is coming up with actionable items we call landmarks. We created 30 of them through each age and stage of a child's development. And as a community, we got together and are making sure that each kid has access to those experiences. Over time, we cultivate and nurture a steward, a caretaker of the earth, caretaker of each other. I'm really excited about that. And you can access a book that we just published online. And next. The book has, first of all, a landmark. That's the thing that we'd like kids to know, but it's based on a principle that's age appropriate, that works for that kid at that age. And then over time, these 30 landmarks, they help to lead to an ethic of stewardship and kinship. So it's structured in the why. Why do we have this principle? What the landmark is, and some pictures of kids doing that landmark. It's pretty amazing. In a small community of Peterborough, Ontario, we registered over 62,000 landmarks. A landmark is a family going for a hike and meeting one, a school kid naturalizing a garden. Anyway, different landmarks. Next. You can access this at thepathwaysproject.ca. Download the book. You can also see many really interesting videos of each of those landmarks in action. And there's a documentary that's coming out and it'll be ready sometime at the end of March. So if you visit the website, there'll be a link to that documentary. But anyway, I hope camps are a place that can inspire kids to create a positive, greener future. We need that. And camps are such a beautiful space to do that. So I'm hoping this information helps you a bit, and what a privilege and an honor to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jacob. And I do love regenerative. I think it's a great term to describe it. And the eye rolling has definitely receded quite a bit. I think it's a great terminology. Do more good, as you would say. So awesome. With that, Christine from Catalina Environmental Leadership Program, welcome and thank you for presenting and sharing some stuff about composting a native plant garden.
Yes, good afternoon or good morning, everybody, depending on where you are. Again, my name is Christine. I'm the program director for the Catalina Environmental Leadership Program. Our program is located on Catalina Island, which is about 22 miles off the mainland coast of Southern California. We host school groups 4th through 12th grade, travel directly to our camp on the northwest end of the island, and attend our residential education program with their school groups. So through hands-on exploration of the marine and terrestrial environment on the island, we focus on teaching 4 basic principles of ecology, which are everything runs on energy, there is no waste in nature, biodiversity is good, and everything is connected. So through hands-on experiences like snorkeling and ecology hikes and tide pooling and team building. The aim is to explore these principles on the island, as well as to examine how human communities can better incorporate these ecological principles into our own human communities. So teaching about energy and water conservation strategies are, of course, relevant to the core goals of our program. And specifically today, I want to talk about our composting and garden program as an example of how we are really delving more into there is no waste in nature principle through our on-site waste management program of food waste, and turning the food waste into a garden resource at our camp. So all schools participate in our gardening and composting program. All non-animal food waste produced from our kitchen and at our mealtime is collected and brought to our garden. So our kitchen, we have a system of collecting the food waste in the buckets that is collected from our kitchen. And then after meals, all students, with the assistance of our staff, sort any food waste they have left over from meals, and any of that food waste we can compost on site. Students take turns bringing those back to our garden in buckets, and they take turns getting involved in the steps of composting to turn that into soil. So once we bring the food back to the garden, we weigh it and log it before we add it into our composting bins. Over the years, we do different approaches to compost, but we certainly have used hot boxes a lot. You can see where we kind of have a 3-bin system, adding all that fresh compost and from the kitchen and meals and garden. We found a good ratio of, for every 1 part nitrogen, so that green, wet, fresh compost, to about 25 parts carbon. So carbon's kind of your dry brown sources. Then the fungus, the bacteria, and the insects get to work to break that down. So when we create that ideal temperature, here we have our trench composting bins, just one big trench. The thermophilic bacteria gets to work and it gets pretty hot. So we kind of have an average of 125, 135 degree Fahrenheit in our bins. So students are involved, of collecting, bringing it to the garden, adding it to the bins, stirring, keeping that airflow to get that good aerobic environment for compost to break down efficiently. And then the next process is, once that's broken down enough in our bins, you can see we get big piles of mulch that the students empty out, and then we sift it so students have the chance to participate in those steps. And with our school programs in the spring, and the fall, and summer camp, we're kind of averaging about 25,000 pounds of food waste is composted on our site annually, which saves us from just sending that to the Pebbly Beach landfill. That's about a 4-hour round trip drive. And also, a huge benefit is then we get to have this beautiful soil that we make on site, and we use it for a few different things. This was exciting. This is when our garden was first started over 20 years ago. And it's really evolved with all the soil. You can see we can, grow vegetables and edible foods for students to take care of and eat and enjoy the benefits of gardening. And there's, additional work for students to do to take care of the actual garden in addition to composting. And then they can enjoy the fruits of everyone's labor of getting to eat or smell or cook. We do some cooking with solar ovens in the garden as well with that resource. And also now we have a small citrus grove. So we are in a Mediterranean climate. So we do try to grow perennial plants that don't require as much, water, which citrus does great. And another really important component of our garden is a native plant nursery. So of all the, soil we make, we are able to use that food waste as a resource. We have a mother plant nursery for some native and rare endemic plants to Catalina Island. Here you see the Malva rosa, which was almost extinct and just found on this little islet off the island due to kind of some non-native deer that were introduced, but we are able to grow and from, seed in our own native plant nursery, grow rare endemic plants such as Malva rosa and then other native plants, and a lot of which then we are able to use those native plants that we grow for the students to then be involved in habitat restoration, both in and around and near our camp, which is all related to having the soil to help grow these plants and get them out and have the students be involved in any step of that process of making the soil, gathering seeds, taking care of native plants, and removing invasive plants and replacing those with native plants, all with the soil that was made from food waste. One thing that's really notable about this program is that we have created systems that work with rotating staff because, of course, as an outdoor environmental education camp, we have staff come and work for different lengths of time, and we always have different students. But just like having the systems at every level from, separating the food waste in the kitchen to separating the food waste at meals and having those structures in place for all groups to come and participate. And in the garden and those composting steps, I think has really made it work and continue to grow over the years and expand what we are able to do with the actual soil that we make from our garden. So that's just an example of something that we're doing, to take care of our food waste on site and incorporate students and schools and campers to turn it into a resource. That's what I wanted to share today. Happy to answer any questions in the future for camps who are getting a composting just started or a garden just started, because there's obviously a lot to learn along the way, but it's very doable. Thank you for your
Christine,
time.
I encourage everyone to go to your website and learn about your work as well as an island, your kinship with the ocean, as well as all that you do with the gardens and composting. Thank you. Next, Kenny Thomas, an executive with Green Park Hotels and Resorts, is going to talk about the Green Park program. Kenny?
Hello, everyone. And
Kenny, you are on mute.
how's that? Is that better?
You're back. You're back.
Thank you. Thank you. Hey, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And I have to say, I'm blown away by all of the great initiatives that all of you guys are working on. It's also exciting to see how similar the tasks are and our roadmap to get to where we need to get as different organizations. Again, I'm Kenny Thomas. I'm with Park Hotels and Resorts. We are the second largest publicly traded hotel real estate investment trust in the company. Although we're the second largest, we're the youngest. We were established in 2017. So not a lot of history behind us. We do have buildings that we're all across the country. They're on beach resort sides. They're in the Hawaiian Islands. They're all over the country, and they range in the 2 million square foot range. Some sitting on 500 acres. They're convention hotels that have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of square feet of meeting space. So they're big energy consumers. So early on, I realized that if we are going to make an impact in what we're doing at our facilities, it has to be more than just something to do, right? We had to prove what the benefit was, not only from a financial side, an environmental side, but also as a publicly traded company, what does it mean to our investors? And so as we put together the initial plan, we found in today's world that investors make decisions based on what your sustainability efforts are and what your scoring is. So I quickly learned that I couldn't partner with one company that could do everything that I needed to get done. So on the initial plan, I developed a group, and it's really several different companies that roll into this one entity that we call Green Park. And with Green Park, it covers, Dalkia Energy Solutions, Schneider for energy procurement, Aquacore for monitoring central plants, Greenview for our data reporting. So from that group, it's, emissions reduction, tracking it, the data around all of the efforts that we're doing, the reporting through our corporate responsibility report, to GRESB, to several other entities that we report to as a company, to energy procurement, to tracking legislation. All across the country, legislations are not consistent. So we track in each one of those cities that we're in, and I can make a business case by, if we don't do XYZ to reduce our emissions, we would be, at risk of potential fines for these different ones, and showing the business impact. So once I got internal buy-in, we established a budget that is solely meant to do green energy and sustainability projects. And we also wrap in risk and resiliency, making our buildings more resilient in some high risk areas. Hurricanes, fires, earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanoes, all of those things are within the areas that we operate in. So we took the top assets, performed ASHRAE level 2 audits, and then from those led to recommissioning of the central plants. It then allows us to look at our projects and prioritize them from those available funds that we have, of which makes the most impact. Years ago, an energy project would be solely based on its financial return, the ROI. That's no longer the case. The emissions reduction plays a big factor in it. ROI is always going to be a factor, but I can make a business case that the reduction in emissions can outweigh the return on the investment. And with that, we partner, and proud to partner with Energy Star. They bring a level of professionalism and certifications and their notoriety to the program, and it gives it more insight. So we partner with Energy Star a great deal, and we work with them through our other hotels. But as it goes forward, I mean, the sustainability certifications are something to be proud of and gives it legitimacy. The tracking of the progress that we do, is part of the Green Park program. In the procurement process, we buy energy on the open market, and in each energy procurement contract that we do has to have a level of sustainable energy. We're doing solar arrays in Hawaii currently now that are plus of 2 meg that will generate 25% of the facility's power. It is interesting, and I'm very encouraged to see the similarities of what we're doing. We do monthly newsletters to all the hotels. We strive and work with them to create their own sustainability programs within the individual hotels, to from the PR side to getting everybody involved, and then communicate. I communicate to our board that then communicates to Wall Street, that then communicate, and we communicate to companies that we pay to help manage our business, which are Hilton's, Marriott's, Hyatt's. All of those are management companies that we work and partner with together. With all that being said, I'm very encouraged by this webinar, the things that we're doing, and I turn it back over to Danny.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kenny. Really exciting to hear kind of the scale of impact that you're able to implement with all of your different properties. And I agree. I think there's so many lessons that we can all learn from each other. And that's, I think, one of the first steps is to kind of share and communicate the opportunities. And, you know, when we latch on to ideas or principles or resources that can really support our efforts, that's what it's all about. So I want to just quickly go over a couple of call to actions that we want to share with the group. I think generally speaking, let's have more conversations. I think by partnering and collaborating with other groups and entities that can get the word out, that can bring people to the table and have the conversation is a really big step. And so I know Jerry and I are excited to collaborate, Green Camps and Energy Star and all the other camp organizations and the partners of Energy Star. I think there's a lot of opportunities to build connections and relationships and find opportunities to really move our efforts forward. So I encourage everyone, let's keep the conversation going. On that note, please go ahead and start throwing any questions you have for our presenters in there. But this QR code, and we'll share this link as well as a follow-up, is a guide to forming a green team. So invite people to the table to have that conversation, to define what sustainability means and looks like to your organization. Building buy-in and building that culture is going to create long-lasting initiatives. Oftentimes we see champions step in and they want to do something that's awesome, but if we don't have that support of our organization, it's going to most likely fall short when that champion steps away. The other thing, the energy and water efficiency checklist for camps and retreats. This is a link, I believe the Green Camps one. Jen shared the one that they worked on. Reach out to Jerry if you want to create your own and have it marketed and co-branded with your organization. It's a great opportunity. Jerry was great to work with in doing the edits that will be more specific to your organization, but also